Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the Legal BD Corner. I'm your host, Jason Broomfield, a Senior Account Director here at Nexl. For today's discussion, we're tackling a topic that is front and center for nearly every major law firm. Of course, today we're talking about lateral hire integration. Now, lateral hiring is a massive investment across the industry. However, turning that investment into ROI does not just happen by chance. It takes strategy, structure, and serious collaboration to make it work. So, what does that mean for you? Well, to help us explore this further, I'm thrilled to be joined by Mitch Sterling, the Chief Client Development and Relationship Officer at Blank Rome. Mitch, welcome to the show. And to get us kicked off, could you please share a little bit about your career in the legal industry?
Sure. Thank you so much, Jason, and really happy to be here. Yes, so I have been at Blank Rome for about 9 years. It'll be 9 years this summer. Prior to that, I was at another large law firm for 9 years as well. And intermittently before that, and some of the time at the other firm, I was actually a practicing attorney. So a lot of the business development acumen and the lens that I look through is really with an eye towards what it means to be a practicing attorney, but also somebody who's deeply focused on marketing and business development. I worked in marketing for a couple of years before going back to law school, and then I just kind of combined both things. And I've been at this for approximately almost 18 years now, and really enjoy it. And it's been a really great way to combine my legal industry experience with my my interest and passion for marketing and business development.
Mitch, thanks so much for sharing that. It sounds like you're well positioned to take us through this topic today. 18 years of experience across the board. So from what you've seen, how important is the strategy for law firm growth?
Lateral strategy is certainly one of the key drivers for law firm growth. We are regularly, as a business development team, focused on it. We are an important part of the discussions that happen as laterals enter the firm. And a lot of the business development work that we do kind of in the background along the lines of industry teams, along the lines of positioning our practices, is both informed by the laterals that arrive and also helps to set the strategy for where there might be gaps in our capabilities. And we play back into the strategic growth priorities of the firm by looking at, what do we need to have a complete offering here? What, just as important as many law firms look at markets and geography, I think that practice capabilities, industry capabilities, which often run through the business development team, and we tap into what those capabilities are to market our firm and our lawyers, are really driving that conversation.
Okay, so the BD team is involved quite materially, in your case anyway. Could you expand on that a little bit? I mean, is it sort of pre-hire that the BD team influences who you're going to be looking for and why?
I would say in the abstract, yes. I'd say that we are often the first to see that, when we're looking at opportunities that the firm wins or loses, and we're looking at questions that we're getting from clients about, their needs, or if we're anticipating their needs, we are often on the front lines of being able to raise the flag on that. And I think that meaning that we are often able to raise the flag on where we, have a need for deeper bench strength, where we have a need for new capabilities, what practice areas are evolving and in what ways. And while we're not saying we need X number of lawyers in X industry or X practice area, we are having regular conversations with our lateral hiring team about what we're seeing. And there's a really good feedback loop happening in that regard. That does drive some decision making for sure.
Yeah, sounds like collaboration across different teams, which is a key theme across all the BD chats I've been having recently. So I want to ask you about the structure, but before I do, I did a little bit of research before we jumped on, and I've got a couple of crazy stats to reel off to you quickly. So more than 90% of AmLaw 200 firms rely on lateral partner hiring as a core growth strategy. However, a lot of those are failures. And so, the cost to bring a lateral on, as can be north of $1 million, maybe even more. And often it could take 2 to 3 years to fully recoup that investment if it is done in a structured way. So there's a lot of risk involved with this, and there's a lot of sort of stats that speak towards implementing a structured approach to this. What are your views on a structured approach? Do you have one in place, and any advice you can give to somebody who's thinking about this?
Sure. Yes, we certainly do have a structure in place. I would say that it continues to evolve. We recently hired a new director of lateral integration, and I think that she will be an important part of really building that structure out and developing it in new ways. We've until then worked with our director of lateral hiring, meeting regularly to talk about recent laterals, to talk about upcoming laterals, to, like I said, raise questions and thoughts on where we might need to look next. To answer the first part of your question, it's absolutely core to our values, and core to growth, to take lateral hiring and its intersection with business development very seriously. I think that there's two components of it that I'm looking at regularly. There's I'd say the science of it is looking at who laterals are bringing in as clients, as well as what additive capabilities those laterals have that they can add to the firm. If they're bringing a new dimension of practice to a specific area, for example, if they're bringing some different capabilities in the labor practice that build out our broader employment practice, that's really interesting in terms of creating some new offerings and some new opportunities for the firm. Similarly, if they are bringing clients to the firm that we may not have had previously, that create opportunities for other practice groups to get involved. So if it's a transactional practice that has clients in a specific industry, that might create some new opportunities for our litigators. And we spend a lot of time as a business development team thinking about who are the proper introductions across the firm, and it's a give and take. It's a two-way street. So that's the science part. I would say the art part is the culture. I think that Blank Rome has a really, really incredible culture. I think that the partners that have been here for a long time really, really value it and respect it. And it's about the people side of things when you're bringing laterals in as well. So you have the business cases, but it's also about, and this is far less scientific, but something that I'd like to think that I am good at, that my team is good at, is trying to really understand who's going to vibe with who. So if it's a matter of introducing partners, you take the science part and you say, well, they really should meet the litigation team, but who are the right litigators that are going to really hit it off with this person and are really going to, welcome the opportunity, and really that these two people would want to get lunch together. Like, I think about that, and I think that that's a really important piece of the puzzle, because on so many levels, this is a people business. It's in the professional services industry. You're certainly buying capabilities. Being an excellent lawyer is table stakes, but it's, who's the right fit for our client? Who's the right fit for a interdisciplinary team? And everyone's a little bit different, and we are a large firm, but there's to a certain extent, there's a lid for every pot, and there's some sort of internal matchmaking, I think, as you're integrating laterals, that's really important. And we really try to build some structure around that and some dedication to that.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you very much, Mitch. And I love the art side of it. I was going to say vibe is probably not a scientific term, but I think we all know exactly what it means. But it's not just from your side on the firm side, it's from the client side as well. Like another stat is that ALM did recently around, I think up to 60% of GCs are very skeptical of lateral hires unless there is a structure in place. What does good look like in terms of the outcome of the structure? I mean, if you're to the North Star, a successful integration, what does that look like for you?
I think a successful integration looks like, and I mean, I guess it's different at different times, and I think that you've touched on some of that, and that is part of the structure in terms of different periods of time with a look back at 3 months, at 6 months, at 12 months. It goes out for, beyond a year for sure in terms of, different things happening at different times. But I'd say 12 months out, for example, I think that you've got a partner that is familiar with the firm, a partner that knows where to go for questions, and a lot of times that's my team. We, as the business development team, have the good fortune of really seeing across the firm in a really unique way. I mean, I have a lot of conversations around the importance of practice groups versus industry teams versus, all different ways of organizing lawyers and structuring lawyers, and different structures have different advantages at different times. But I think a universal truth is that the business development team, because we're positioned across all of the practices and collectively know so much about the firm, because every single day we're submitting pitches, we're replying to RFPs, we're talking about our capabilities. And I've got business development managers that cover specific practice areas, and myself and my director, who's truly wonderful, the two of us are seeing a little bit of all of that every day. So as a team, we have really great insight into everything that's happening across the firm, and a lot of the time we are the point of contact for Lateral when they don't know where to go. And I think success means that they know to come to us, and that we are successfully getting them to the right place, which is fairly easy for us to do. I think they are also starting at 12 months to really have a sense of the firm's capabilities, so that they can speak to them intelligently beyond their practice group. I use a structure of sorts when I'm talking to younger associates or senior associates, for that matter, about how do you talk about what you do in terms of business development. There's three pieces of it, and I think the same structure applies to Laterals. Like, how do you talk about the work that you do? How do you talk about the work that your practice does? And how do you talk about the work that the firm does? And I think if you were to kind of take that same structure and look at it through how's a Lateral doing, I think that they'll be able to masterfully do justice to all three of those things after a year. As a partner, especially partners that are coming from other large firms, this isn't the first time they're doing this, but they're tapping into a new knowledge set, right? There's things that Blank Rome does exceptionally well that are often key talking points when developing business. And I think a successful Lateral knows how to hit on those things and knows how to spot opportunities in those areas, so that they're not just growing their own practice, they're growing the firm's strength overall.
Yeah, brilliant answer. And a couple of things to note there. As the BD guy, you didn't mention revenue once, and that speaks to how important it is to manage all the softer stuff. This is a people business after all. The vibe needs to be good, and that actually leads us to success because we're all singing on the same hymn sheet. And I love the three questions. I think that makes a lot of sense. If a partner cannot do that after 12 months and something has gone wrong in the process, what in your experience have you seen are the biggest sort of things that can go wrong when it comes to integrating laterals?
Sure. Well, let me just pause for a second and say I don't want to understate the importance of driving revenue. It's almost implicit, I guess, and maybe that's why I didn't say it explicitly. But it really is there are all of these aspects of art and science, but at the end of the day, success certainly means driving revenue. And I think that being able to answer those questions along the lines of what do I do, what does my practice do, what does the firm do, that's all with an eye towards driving revenue, but recognizing that that's the end goal, but this is the way to get there. In terms of answering your question about, what does maybe an integration that didn't go well look like, the question becomes, when integration doesn't go well, I think that there's a lot of things that can contribute to that. It's really hard to point at any one thing. I think if you look at the opposite and you see a partner that maybe is a little siloed, or maybe hasn't necessarily asked for help, or hasn't necessarily taken guidance, or is really focused on his or her own thing. And a lot of firms are of the nature that it's a bunch of hallways with a bunch of doors where everyone's doing their own thing. And that's not necessarily wrong, but that's not necessarily what our goal is. Our goal is for people our lateral partners to really be woven into the fabric of the firm, to contribute as much as they can, but also receive as much as they can. And I think that if partners tend to just kind of really just tread water with the work that they had been doing somewhere else, and just using the letterhead to some extent, and being under a different banner, it really is more than that. I haven't seen a whole lot of that. I think that a lot of it really comes down to so many partners come here because of the platform it affords and want to take advantage of a platform with national presence across the U.S., with a really strong set of industry capabilities across multiple industries, a culture where cross-selling and collaboration is really, really supported. I think most people are coming to us because of those possibilities, and I think as much as it's an investment for the firm and a serious growth component, as you pointed out to with those statistics, to come back to the people thing, this is a really important move for the lateral as a person. And I think that when you look at the typical archetype of lateral partners that are practicing in big law firms, they're motivated people that want to succeed. So there's really, there's I wouldn't say that there's a lot of failures. I would say that there's, without being too diplomatic, I'd say that there's sometimes maybe not all of the possibilities are maximized, but that's something that I think can always be fixed. And it's really, to your earlier point, an important part of kind of keeping your eye on the ball and recognizing that lateral integration is not months long, but often a years long process.
Yeah. Thanks, Mitch. So something that you sort of implied there, but I'm going to double down on here, was really interesting to me. It's not that when it goes bad, it's more like what is not happening in the build up to a bad lateral. So if you're not hearing from that partner, if they're not coming to you for help, if they are kind of in their little box doing their own thing, but not really a part of the culture or not embracing it, or at least not asking questions around how they can get exposure to more, then those are sort of your red flags. But the great thing about that is that you can see that coming. It's like a leading indicator. So there are things that you can do as a BDE, as anybody really, who's got a stakeholder of the firm. Can jump in and sort of correct that. So before I let you go, Mitch, we're almost at time. If I was a budding BD director and I'm looking to really put a structured process like this in place, what are your top tips, do's and don'ts?
Yeah, I think that it is very much a team effort, and I know that the focus of our conversation is really on business development, but I want to give credit to the fact that there are many folks beyond the business development team that are working on this, and I think that for a director to be successful, I'd say this is a universal truth, whatever you're talking about, but building alliances across the firm when you're a director really sets the stage, one, for your career growth, into the C-suite, but also there's so much to learn from other business professionals in the firm. I would be talking to your, technology folks. I would be talking to your legal operations and legal project management, pricing, practice management, innovation, whatever it's called at your firm. Talk to them as well, because the metrics and the data really are what supports the integration in so many ways. So seeing what, you're going to need to have conversations to understand and capture the data around, where these clients, where these lateral partners are opening new matters, where these lateral partners are, how they're capturing their time, for example, and, how much time they're putting towards business development. And all of this is really supportive of, one, the indicators of success, but two, a broader conversation about the whole firm working together to ensure laterals are successful. So that's one piece of the structure and of the building block. The other thing I would say is really just open the lines of communication. I mean, in most firms, the business development team is separate from the lateral recruiting team, but there should be regularly scheduled conversations with the lateral recruiting team, whether that's quarterly, whether that's monthly, at least with chiefs and directors, to kind of understand with strong confidence, strong confidentiality, to the extent that it can be shared, what's coming down the pike. It's often important for us to know, as we're thinking about expanding existing client relationships, that if there's somebody coming down the pike with new capabilities that would be really important to that client in the next couple of months, it's really important to know that and say to the billing attorney, you know what, I know you're thinking about pitching this right now, but there's a possibility that we'll have additional bench strength that'll be important. And I think maybe if it's all the same to you, maybe we wait a couple of months and see what we can do. And you have to be very careful with that, and you have to really maintain confidentiality. And certainly you're not getting into the business of naming names or any kind of specifics, but it's really helpful for us to know that as we're thinking strategically. Also, from what I was mentioning at the beginning of the call, I think it's really important to kind of use that as a feedback opportunity to say, it seems like maybe there's a possibility that we would have a better chance at work with this client if we had somebody with these capabilities. So that conversation, I would tee that up. I would make sure that you're having regular conversations with the lateral recruiting team. And, I think that finally that conversation is really an important element of that I don't think we touched on previously, is understanding the business development team at whatever point in the lateral hiring process. Maybe it's when the person already has an offer and they're in the door and we're doing some work around their pre-arrival, which we do, or when we meet with them for the first time when they're officially at the firm. It's really important to understand the rationale and the strategy behind the hire. Sometimes it's really just organic growth. Sometimes it's, we need more litigators here, or we need more real estate folks, with these capabilities. But sometimes it really is driven by strategy, and, it's meant to be a complement to a specific practice area in a new way. It adds a new dimension. This person is bringing clients that we didn't have before, and it's really important for the business development team to have a candid conversation and understand the why of the lateral, and that really sets the tone for the integration. So I think maybe we just kind of uncovered some important truths in the last part of this conversation, but I think that's all part of what setting up a successful lateral integration program from the BD side of the house looks like.
It all starts with the why, as that famous book by Simon Sinek. So on that
Sinek, right?
Brilliant note. Yeah, well done. I should have that book behind me. Mitch, thank you very much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
The Legal BD Corner was a great episode. A lot to talk about, a super important topic. So to our audience, I hope you enjoyed that. We'll be back next month. And until then, take care.